So this is basically my tips on how to practice effectively. This is basically for any instrument, but you can, like I said, it's for any instrument. So yeah. But I'm gonna mainly talk about what I do as a bass player because that's what I play. I play bass. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. The one thing I like to do to practice effectively is to pick a time to when to practice. I don't really like practicing when I'm not used to, because then it takes time away from whatever else I'm doing. I'm not as focused, and also it's just I like having a routine. So that's one thing I like to do. Another thing I like to do, which is number 2, is to practice what you need to practice. Don't just start practicing what you need to practice and go on and start doing something else, because that's not practicing, that's jamming. Even though jamming is pretty fun, that's not what you should be doing with your time. Especially if you set the time for just practicing. So make sure you practice only what you need to practice. But also, because if you practice other stuff, you won't be as good as you would be if you practice that specific part in the song. So let's say the one song that I'm working on right now is New World Man by Rush, and I have it pretty much down pat, but it's just the one part right before the chorus I have trouble with. So I'm just practicing that part because I already know the rest. I don't need to practice that. I just need to practice that one little part that I don't know. So that's another thing. Another thing you should do to practice effectively is, this sort of ties in with picking a time to practice, but practice less more often than for longer less often. So instead of practicing, let's say, for an hour each week, you should practice 10 to 15 minutes every day or something like that, because you're still caught up on your music, and also you can get on the instrument and start practicing right away and start off where you left off. Sometimes if you practice longer for less, so let's say an hour for each week, you come back the next week and you don't really know what's happened because of the long gap between practice times. And also because also it just helps you with the routine, because I like having a routine. And for those who like to have a routine, you should do that. Another thing I like to do is practice with a metronome. Now, if there's a really hard part, or let's say a riff, because I'm a bass player, so I usually call it a riff. But if let's say if you have a part in a concert band song or a jazz band song that you can't really get, just take that specific part, slow it down to a slower metronome speed that you can play it comfortably, and keep on practicing that at that metronome speed. So let's say the song is at 105 beats per minute, and there's this one part that's a mixture of 8 and dotted 16th notes that you can't get. So slow that down to, let's say, about 65, 70 beats per minute. Get that nailed down at that speed, and once you feel comfortable, go up slowly, faster. So start at 70, then go up to like 73 or 75, and then go up to 77, whatever. Just use a metronome, because it helps me when I practice and doing really hard bass riffs. So I think you guys should do that. Also, when you're practicing as well, I'm going to emphasize it. I'm going to keep on emphasizing this because it's so important to me. I feel like it should be important to you. Only practice what you need to practice. Because why are you practicing stuff that you don't need to practice? Because let's say, for example, you have a concert next week, and you're playing this one song that you have basically down pat, but you just don't know that one part. And you keep on practicing the part of the song that you do know, and not part of the song that you don't know. And then you go to play it, and it sounds like crap because you didn't practice the part you need to practice. Practice the part that you need to practice, and I guarantee you your playing will be a lot better. Another one I like to say for practice is have a warm-up routine. So let's say if you're a clarinet player, to play a couple scales, do some long tones, do some arpeggios. For drummers, do some rudiments like paradiddles, double stroke, 5-stroke roll, or whatever. And for guitar players, do finger permutations, which is different patterns of your fingers on the frets. So let's say the pattern is 1 2 3 4 or 1 3 2 4. Do modes, do different finger stretches for bass guitar players and guitar players. Trombone players, make sure that your articulation is fine, and same with saxophone players and clarinet players and any woodwind players. Make sure that, and any brass players, make sure that your articulation is good, because you do not want to sound like baloney when you're playing, let's say at the Toronto Symphony Orchestra. You don't want to sound like baloney, and you're probably getting paid a lot of money to play, and to play well. Not to play like baloney, but to play well. Another tip I have is be very fluent with your scales. This is more for like bass players or guitar players, but be very fluent with your major scales. But this can be for other instruments too, because let's say you're at a jam session and somebody says, "Oh, we're going to play a 4/4 riff at using the A minor 7 chord." And if you don't know what that is, look it up, because if somebody ever says that to you and then it's your turn to solo and you don't know what it is, you're not going to sound very good. You're going to be playing random notes that don't fit with what the rest of the group is playing, because the rest of the group is playing an A minor 7 and you're probably playing a G major or a D diminished or something like that. Also, another thing for bass players too is, and also for any instrument, know where all your notes are on your instrument. So if you were to ever see that note that comes up on your sheet music, and you don't know what it is, learn where your notes are and learn how to play them. I know for me, with my bass teacher, he made me learn all the notes on the fretboard and then play them as quarter notes for certain beats per minute. I had it all the way up to 200 beats per minute, playing all the G's on my bass. And with my bass, there are 2 octaves on each string, so it's a lot of G's. So yeah, those are my tips and tricks on how to practice effectively. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and hopefully you guys take these tips and use them for when you're practicing your instruments. I know I do, so I think you guys should too. And who knows, maybe you'll be in a rock band like I am. Maybe you'll be playing in the symphony orchestra. Maybe you'll be playing in a jazz band. Who knows? Maybe you're not even going to be in music, but it's always good to have these tips because it will help you in the future. Thank you.